Open up the finance meeting.
Do you have to say the pledge again?
No, I think we're good, right?
No, so this is the Board of Finance meeting. This is a once-a-year deal that's a requirement that we have to have. So the first item of business here is reorganization. And in the past, I will say that we have mirrored nominations for the standard board for president, vice president, and secretary. Although it's at your pleasure as to how you'd like to handle the board for the Board of Finance. I'm good. I'm gonna continue that? Yeah.
So I gotta approve something?
So we have a motion to continue the same, following the board president, secretary, and nomination for treasurer there for the Board of Finance as well. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Okay, first motion done. Second one is our investment report for the calendar year 2022. I want to put this one up on screen because I had Nate ask me today, was that a typo, Dana? Because by contrast, last year when I came to you and I showed you a Board of Finance investment report to show you what our investment earnings were, it was quite the reverse. And that's because interest rates tanked last year. And unfortunately, Centur had to lower our rate to what the feds had lowered it then. I got a wonderful phone call, probably about 4 months ago from Centur saying, guess what? Fed rates went up and Centur is going to honor their promise to you when you move your accounts here. We're bumping you back up in interest. You are going back to making some money on your money. So last year, our total interest earned was at $13,810.29. This year, with the bump up that we had here, we made $185,148.89 on our money.
That's
That
awesome.
just blows me away.
It is, yes, it is. We made this change to Centur, I believe 4 years ago we're going on now. They gave us a great rate. They wiped out all our fees that we were paying with our banking before, and they really wanted our business. I mean, they've been knocking our door for a while. And we switched, and I thought it was too good to be true because I know for a fact we were given a gift because I have discussed, searched around to see what other districts are making on their Centur accounts. So I'm very happy with the service they're giving us. So this is true, this is great, and when we had the reverse last year of losing that $150,000 to $200,000 in interest, it was definitely a blow to the budget. So it's nice to be back in the money on this end.
That's awesome to
making
see
money
again.
off of our money. So that's the first order of business for me to present. The second, and I would recommend continuing on that path. We have all our monies in an interest-bearing checking account. We don't have them tied up in CDs for any specific period. We're making money on our money sitting in our checking account. We have multiple checking accounts so I can move. I don't have the bulk all in one. We're safe and secure and all that kind of stuff. And we're earning a high rate of return similar to what we would have in a CD without having the ties of having a time commitment. So I would recommend continuing this fashion, and that's how I'd like to proceed. So the other portion of this presentation, yearly presentation, is that we go through our fiscal financial conditions here. The Department of the DUA Board, that's the Distress Units Appeals Board, established these meetings, or established 6 fiscal indicators, and this happened back in 2018. And this was in response to some situations that were happening in schools, particularly Gary's schools in Muncie. Mismanagement, let's say, or not so close watch on their financial conditions. So they worked with our organization, my professional organization, IASCO, Indiana Association of School Business Officials. We got a committee together and we said, let's take a look at some financial health indicators and develop some key spots here that we should keep an eye on in order to report on a yearly basis to see when a school district might be financially strained or might need some help, rather than when it's too late, and swoop in. So that's what this is here. There are 6 indicators, like I said. The first one is average daily membership. So they take a look at that. They take a look to see if a school district is losing membership on a repeated basis, and if they're losing it at a high rate. In the state of Indiana right now, currently under the funding formula, you have 2 count days, and both of them mean dollars and cents to your school district. You have a September count, you have a February count. September count, you look at that, you get a nice count on that one, and you can count on your funding for the first 6 months of the year. Your February count comes in, and typically from what this chart shows, although it's very small in between, typically our second count in February is less students than we had in our September. That's early graduates, that's transitions, things like that that play into that. We've had a heightened focus on keeping those kiddos in school, maybe for that last semester here, to give them some more enrichment before sending them out into the world. But sometimes early graduation is just inevitable, they do. So the trend has been typically between 20 and 40 students difference between the beginning count and the ending count. At our current rate of $6,600 per student, it's kind of financially straining to have your income, your revenue reduced in that second count or that second 6 months, because you really can't let teachers go. You can't reduce staff. You can't do anything at that point because you've got to finish out the year and you've got commitments. So it's not the best part of the funding formula for schools. Let me just say that. That's something that we're always asking for. Can we please go back to just one count? So 9 of the last 11 school years have been decreases in enrollment. The last 2, now this is a Dana chart, not part of the 6, but I threw this in here because it's easier for me to see. We're just looking at September counts here, but it was easier for me to see, and I always keep track of this, our positives and our negatives. But our last 2 school years have been a positive, just over 100 students, which is a good thing. We had our pandemic year of -86. I hate to think what that number would have been had we not had our virtual academy there, which saved a lot of students and kept our students in our district and kept them coming back. But we're showing a positive trend. Of course, that 21-22 school year with the +77, that was our bumper crop of kindergarten students that we had come in.
I like this graph because you could see the enrollment declines when I left, and it was, now that I'm back, you can see the numbers.
I know.
I just wanted to add that.
If we run out of space, leave.
You're out.
I always map this out, and we've lost 330 students since 2009, 2010. If those students were on the books this year, still here, or we hadn't lost that, and we just at least maintained the level that we had in 2009 of that 3,600 students, we'd have over $2 million more in the budget for that.
Can't change it.
Next one we look at here is we look at the changes in what you have for your free and reduced. This chart here shows that our peak for free and reduced percentage here was right in 2018, which was a 29%. Our current is 25.5, so we're normally right in that spot there between 25 and 29. When I started here, our special ed population was in the 11% range. We're now up to 15% for special ed. And our EL population has been pretty steady there with the 1.9. Fund balances. This shows different types of funds. I do want to say it's probably easier to look at this only from the standpoint of 2019, 2020, and 2021, because there was a change in state of Indiana. We ditched the general fund, we ditched that kind of terminology, and we combined funds. In 2019, we went to only education and operations funds. So looking back at the history, you see a lot of below the lines there. That one in particular in 2015, that was some construction funds that we were waiting on reimbursements. In all of those situations, anything that's below the line is a negative fund on our books at the end of this calendar year, but that is reflective of money that we had requested but had not received yet. Nothing to be alarming. All the important funds, the education fund, and the operations funds, are above the line. This one shows just general annual deficit and surplus. If you've got some yellow below the line there, that's showing there's a difference between the two. These orange and red ones, in previous years, I have not had those on there. I can't take them off. Those are, say, revenue exceptions and expenditure exceptions. Those are just transfers between the funds, and we can transfer a certain amount of money from education fund to operations fund, and we pass a resolution on a yearly basis to do that as part of the budget process. That's just showing that up there. We've never had that on this report, but for some reason they added it this year. But what's interesting about that, the orange and red in 19, 20, and 21, the transfers, you can see we're transferring less. We're keeping as much money as we can in that education fund. Those squares have gotten much smaller. Originally, when we started this, we were transferring the maximum 15% that was allowable, that wouldn't get you on the report of shame at the DOE. And now we're transferring less than 7%, which is less than what Lake Central does, and we are the only two school districts that are below, I'd say, 14% in the region. And that's because we have a healthy tax base coming in through our operations fund. 6 of the last 8 years, we've been reducing, or we've been spending more than we've been taking in. We were investing in our programs here through training and staff, and then, of course, the pandemic hit. We ended up spending a little more. I would beg to differ that many school districts spent more that year just to keep things open and running. So fund balances here as a percent of expenditures. 8.3 fund balance, which is 1 month of expenditures, a balance of that is considered absolute, not really healthy at all. A 20% balance, which is slightly over 2 months of expenditures, is desired target. We're at a combined right now of 21.1. So we're right on the cusp of being in, I'm comfortable. Let me say that, but I'm also getting cognizant that we've been on a standard decline here. So that's hence the reason why we're looking at referendum and other funding sources for us. This one in particular takes a look at the specific to education and rainy day funds. Only those 2 funds. The chart before I showed you were all funds combined. This one's just education and rainy day funds. And this actually shows why we haven't been transferring as much money over to operations out of education. So we're keeping as much as we can over here because we were starting to drain our education fund for our operations.
And so what reason would it be going down so much? I mean, I could see in 17, 18, and 19, there's somewhat of a plane, and then now it's just going down to what?
In 2020 and 21, we had the loss of students, the 86 loss of students.
Okay.
So yeah, loss of revenue. So that's really it, is that we had pandemic hit, we had loss of students, we had increased costs, and now you've got inflation going on too. So all that stuff that we hadn't thought of, would ever happen in the next 5 years, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's part of it. And then all the remediation services that we've had to add as well. Yes, we've got ESSER funding and grant funding too, but there's a lot of other services there too.
But with the enrollment going back up, at least the trend showing that it is, that those numbers should go up.
Hopefully, and the referendum will help that too. Yeah. Because again, like Kevin said, we're maintaining status quo, but we're not able to grow the way we want to. We're not able to exceed, the standard basics that we've been doing for a while. We really want to do more for our students and community. This one just shows operations fund as well. So we're happy with where our operations fund. It was kind of tricky in that 2019. They combined our bus replacement, transportation, and capital projects all into one fund. Now you got one pot of money. You don't have dedicated money just for purchasing buses and dedicated money for operating buses and dedicated money for your building brick and mortar. They put it all into one, so it's like a balancing act to make sure you're not starving one.
You okay, buddy?
Oh, yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there. This one's one that we have to report on as well. This just shows all of our revenue types. So the blue one, which of course is the largest revenue type here, is our state revenue. So this chart is showing that we are really dependent on how many students come in here, because that is our largest revenue. Below that would be our local taxpayer, the tax revenue. So if taxpayers stop paying their money and we start losing students, you know, then we've got a problem there. They stop paying their money and that. So this is just showing how dependent we are on that. If you have a lot of federal stimulus money, I would suspect some of the districts to the north do, it would show how dependent they are on that year.
Is the,
Sure.
that 2016-17, where the pink is, the other local, is that what, when you reference the, we lost a couple companies, is that is that lost there?
There were, no, this is the revenue actually, and this is showing we had a spike in revenue. So back in then, we had some local revenue that came in, and that was specific to construction funds. That's what we did, a lot of construction in that time, so we had construction funds. This one I have to show.
Flatline.
It shows nothing because we don't have a referendum during this year. But if and when we would have a referendum, yes, you would see some data here for that. And speaking of referendum, I always throw this one, I like to throw this one up here, and we've been using this one on the road show. This is just a reminder that there are 16 school districts in Lake County. 16 school districts, public schools here. 10 have passed a referendum. They've been successful to go to their taxpayers and ask them for more money on top of what we get from the state, and they have passed. 2 have run referendums and failed. That would be Lake Ridge and East Chicago. Their public did not support their referendums. Of those 10 that passed, not only did they pass an operating referendum, which is for people, staff, benefits, programs, they also, some of those passed construction referendums too, capital referendums. So they went to their public and asked for 2 referendums and got them, not only one. So 10 of them passed, 2 have failed. This one says 2 running. We just found out last week 3 are running. 2 in May, 1 in November of the following year. So May of 2023, you'll see Tri Creek and Highland on the ballot. In November of 23, you will see Whiting on the ballot. Whiting is running. And the last one, it would only be 1 idling, and that would be Maryville Schools that hasn't run a referendum yet. Although I know they might be soon. Quick and easy here, that one in the middle, 33 cents operating referendum is Griffith Schools. They most recently passed 33 cents. Just to keep that in mind, and we're asking for 20.5 cents. This one shows your fund balances, and it's got all the school districts up there. The ones with the X do not have referendums right now. So those are the ones that don't. Oops, I've got a school town of Munster on here. Why do I have that one? I think it slid over. Oh, it's supposed to slide over to East Chicago. I see that. It slid over. That X is supposed to be over here at East Chicago. But those are the school districts that don't have revenue money on the books right now. And you can see I've ranked them by cash balance percentage. Remember the 20% was like a comfortable range. Anything above that is a lot of cash balance. Anything below that is a little scary. So we've got Gary at 11% cash balance, Hammond at 11.9. I don't know if you saw the headline in your
I
comments
did, I
today.
was reading that.
Yep, what their CFO said, we're spending too much money. And then Hobart at 16.3, we're at 22.2 with the yellow there. This is all funds. All funds, including referendums. So the referendum money is in here. So there are school districts here on this chart that are to the left of us that have a higher cash balance because of their referendums. When I take that referendums away, you see we skip up the line. We were 4th from the bottom. We go up to the middle here. When I take their referendum funds away and rank these school districts, you can see cash balance wise, I've got Lake Central. We would have a higher cash balance than Lake Central right now. Think of how many students they have versus us and what their revenue is. We would have a higher cash balance percentage if they didn't have their referendum. So if we made this a level playing field and said no referendums at all, let's take a look at these school districts. That's what that does. And how about the schools like Hobart, Lake Central, River Forest, those schools to our right here that we're exceeding in just basic handling of finances. I mean, this is showing that we're doing more with less, better than those other schools. That's the way I see it. The ones to the right have had referendums for quite a while too. The ones that flip that chart a little bit, so that's another thing to look at, to say that I'm proud of on that chart. And then all the other reports are kind of interactive, and you can go in there and see numbers behind all these charts as well. So that's the end of the fiscal indicators, qualitative report.
Could you go back to slide number 3, please?
Sure.
I'm just kidding, I'm kidding.
You wanna see something else? Yeah.
No.
Never let the business manager talk about it.
I just see the look in your eyes, you're like so into this, which is good.
So I guess the last on here, we have new business. Do we normally take, do we accept the report? I guess that's what we have to do.
Hey, make a motion with that?
Yeah, accept the report as presented and continuing with the current policy.
I'll
Is
make-
that a recommendation?
I'll make the motion.
I'm gonna say.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? You're good.
That's it.
Pretty good. I
That's
was
it?
on 10%.